the biggest ham in the world is about to tell you all about everything and nothing. It's really an egoic endeavor. You realize that.
How do you do that when you?
It's not about it because because I don't dislike the ego. You know, it's only here for a little while. It's just an appearance. Let it play its role. Well, I was reading something last night, and it was in a book called Das Bodh, by somebody in Siddha Rameshwar's and Nisargadatta Maharaj's lineage, and he basically said you can't. You know, if there's a me trying to get enlightened, that eventually has to go, and yet it doesn't go away, and there's just this enlightened, you know, Shiva Lingam sitting here or whatever. You know, there's a human body with its built-in ego, and it functions just like it always did. And it's just that there's no attachment to it. There's no belief in that the ego is anything other than a construct that's playing itself out in a body. And it's fun, so let it have a good time. You know, someone asked me once what the purpose of life was, and I've just said, delight. Just be delighted, be here. You can be delight too. You know, it's like it's delightful.
Yeah, just want to start with a quote from a conversation with Ramana.
Yeah.
And just I'll read it. It's pretty short, and then I'd like to just get your input on it, your interpretation. Ramana says, if you are vigilant and make a stern effort to reject every thought when it rises, you will soon find that you are going deeper and deeper into your own inner self, where there is no need for your effort to reject the thoughts. The questioner says, then is it possible to be without effort, without strain? Ramana says, not only that, it is impossible for you to make an effort beyond a certain extent. The questioner responds, I want to be further enlightened. Should I try to make no effort at all? And Ramana says, here it is impossible for you to be without effort. When you go deeper, it is impossible for you to make any effort.
Wow. Well, he kind of answered the question. What do you say to that? So in my experience with self-inquiry, I guess I was very, very lucky because it seemed to be enough to be willing to know the truth. Not as some intellectual construct, but just simply for the truth to be the truth. I believe that effort is necessary in the beginning. For me, it wasn't really that successful, except for one thing. It let me know that my mind and all of its machinations and efforts actually this mind seemed to be unable to sustain effort for very long. And there was a bit of frustration, followed by, it's almost like a surrender. Well, if that's the truth, if this is the way it is, this is the way it is. If this particular mind is incapable of, of the single-pointedness that perhaps some Buddhists have arrived at, and people who are very, very strong meditators. But I don't know that because, I meditated for a couple of years doing transcendental meditation, and then several retreats I made with Tibetan Buddhists down in Los Angeles at the Dharma Dhatu. There, I think it's on 1st or 3rd Street in Los Angeles. So in this case, I know that Nisargadatta talks about earnestness, Ramana and Gangaji talk about vigilance, and I'm in agreement that vigilance is good and that earnestness is good. But for me, it seemed like willingness, just an open, honest willingness for everything to be exactly the way it was sufficient, you know, in this body.
So it's more like a complete surrender.
Yes. Yeah, and sometimes the effort is necessary in the beginning to realize that my own machinations aren't going to give me myself. And it was much later that I realized that the reason it wouldn't give me myself is because I always am myself. I've never not been myself. And, you know, and so I was trying to be something that I couldn't be because I already was it.
Was there a certain...
I couldn't become because I already was it. Was that, yeah.
Was there a certain day or moment where everything kind of crystallized in terms of it becoming that simple?
There were explosive things that happened where there was a recognition that basically I'm not what I take myself to be, that I wasn't what I took myself to be at the time. But the knowledge became certain very slowly. You know, the confusion went away very slowly. You know, the mind immediately would glom onto the epiphanies and make them a piece of property. You know, well, this must mean that I've arrived now. I've had the explosion. Well, I've been in bliss for 6 months now. I must be enlightened. Let me go to Satsang and sit in the front row and stare at the guru until he recognized me and confirms my enlightenment. You know, that's the way my brain was working at the time. And it was
at that time
pretty comical.
Who was the guru? Who was the influence?
They were all over the place. Anytime if there was a satsang within 100 miles, I would be there. I'd get in the car and go.
And was it effective, or did it turn out to be not needed at a certain point?
You know, I don't know. I think it was, what I tell everybody is what I did myself, and if there's satsang, be in satsang. You know, every time there's an opportunity to be in satsang, do it. You know, there's something here in satsang that's really magical. You know, you get reflected back to yourself. And then you'll be able to see yourself, you know, the reflection of yourself clearly. And the mind will naturally quiet itself in the recognition. And it's just that there's no attachment to it. There's no belief in that the ego is anything other than a construct that's playing itself out in a body. And it's fun, so let it have a good time. You know, someone asked me once what the purpose of life was, and I've just said, delight. Just be delighted, be here. You can be delight too, you know, it's like it's delightful.